This podcast is produced by Sunnydale Studios.
I don't want just anybody. Let me treat you like somebody. Try to dive on a Rari. This forever, we ain't stopping.
Hi lovers, welcome back to another episode of Big Love Energy. In this episode, we are joined by the incredible Stephanie Murray, founding partner of Richardson Murray Law, and Shaneel Bergola, partner of New Wave Accountants. Both Steph and Shaneel have been such important pillars of support to me as I entered the new phase of life. So naturally, I wanted to share their wisdom with you all. So let's get started. Welcome, ladies. So I really wanted to get you in today. It's been a long time coming. You were both there for me on a personal level leading up to, during, and even more so post-separation, and our connection just gets stronger as we go through life together. We met at the gym, F45, about 4 or 5 years ago, and we all just click. We trained together in the morning, 4:45, and during that particularly fragile time when I was making the decision to go out on my own, you were both such monumental rocks as dear friends, but also experts in your own respective professions. Steph, an incredible lawyer, founding partner of Richardson Murray, and Shaneel, owner and accounting superstar of New Wave Accountants. You are always willing to part with valuable advice at such a critical time, and along with a lot of hugs. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so exciting. Are you nervous?
A little, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love that you guys, you know, what you do for a living is like I just look up to, and you're such corporates and yet you're nervous for this little old podcast. We'll have fun. Big love energy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, what your role or focus is at your respective businesses. Did you both always want to know that you were going to be I'm going to say boss girls, but bosses? And when did you know that law and finance was your jam? Who would like to go first?
Okay, I'll go. I'll go backwards. I decided I wanted to be a lawyer when I was 8. I've so enjoyed debating and being difficult, and my parents were like, this is the career for you. I got on the train and just continued down that path, finished school, went straight to uni, finished uni and started as a lawyer when I was 21. So this is my 14th year of practice. I've worked for many other people, and during COVID, I was still working really hard and so much was happening in the world, and my business partner and I were just like, why don't we do this for ourselves? Why are we working so hard to benefit other people? And we just made the choice to do that. And in fact, that was happening at the same time as you were making your decisions in your life. And I remember those days at F45 where we were sitting out the front stressing, talking about the world and these big decisions that we were making, and really relying on each other and really helping each other make them. And genuinely, I'm not sure I would have taken the step to jump into Richardson Murray if I wasn't surrounded by other boss girls who were making those decisions and doing those things too. It's been a huge source of support, and I really value it.
Oh, it was such a time.
It was a time.
Yeah, it was a time. And yeah, so proud of you for making that step and watching you flourish ever since. It was the best decision, and yeah, you own it. So
no regrets.
No regrets.
Exactly.
And then Shaneel?
Me, so I actually had no idea what I wanted to do when I finished school, and I came out and I was going to just do a business degree, but I made the decision to go into commerce instead because I wanted to actually come out with something that I could potentially go into with a career. So that's why I decided to go with accounting. I didn't mind the subject at school, so I thought I'll give it a go. And like Steph, I finished school, went straight to uni, came out and went straight into a full-time role of accounting as well. Worked at a few firms. I myself didn't start New Wave. It was actually my husband that started it initially, and I joined him a couple of years in along the way. So
cute.
Yeah.
Oh, we love Ruben.
We do.
He's a
love him.
superstar. Amazing. So I've got you here today. It's a bit of a different flavour. Like, I've had a lot of heartfelt convos, but I want to do that today, but with a real practical side, purely because I'm messaged daily by women who followed my journey over the last 8 years, ups and downs, highs and lows, and many reaching out in desperation for advice. And sometimes energetically I have, the space to have like a really intimate, deep one-on-one back and forth conversation with these ladies and feel like I can share my learnings. But then other times, just because with everything that goes on with, single mum life, business owner, like the rental crisis, like everything that's going on, I'm still in the thick of my journey really. And some days are better than others, and
Absolutely.
a message might come through and I'll see it and I'll just be like, I want to help this person, but I can't even help myself at the minute. And it's just, that's one of the lessons that I would love to share with people, that it's like, it's never going to be a perfect scenario because it's just hard and you find yourself in the situation. But I still want to share the strength that I have garnered from the whole situation and the strength of you ladies and what, advice you sort of shared with me. So I just thought this beautiful platform where we share big love energy, especially in hard times, because what we've learnt from each guest is that everyone has their fair share of struggles, that we would spend a whole precious episode on delving into the intricacies. That's an intricate word.
Intricacies.
Separation. We've got to keep this light because otherwise it gets heavy real quick. And this is completely coming from a place where I want to be really clear that I want nothing more for whole families. Like, I want families to remain together. I'm not an advocate for divorce.
Neither am I.
Says the family lawyer. I come from a broken family full of complexities and wanted nothing more than to create a loving family of my own. And I promise you I did try to be the best wifey, best mum. But that's not how it played out for me, and it's not how it plays out for a lot of women and men going through similar situations. So I know the frustrations of when you feel you're at your wit's end and you truly feel like you've got nothing left. And I guess this episode is just for the listeners who may be at the start of their journey or right in the thick of it. I just know it's a hard conversation and it has to be had. So that's why I got you lovely ladies on today. So I suppose we start there. If someone is in those early days of feeling stuck and at a loss as to where to start, what advice you would have for them? And full disclaimer, I'm not talking about people in an emergency situation. I know that's real talk. When your life is in danger, we'll put in the show notes direct helplines if you need a way out. And in fact, Steph, you might be the person to share that info.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll make sure that that's readily available. But I want you advice to give potential clients that come to you, actually rewinding. If someone's listening to this and they're in a situation where they're not wanting to separate. They are wanting to separate but unsure if they're really in that space yet, like that little moment before. What would you have them consider before they take that first step?
It's a really good question, and I think I really want to preface this by saying everyone's journey is different, and you can talk to 4 of your girlfriends who have gone through the same thing, or your mates or your friends, and they will all have different experiences. So often I see when people come in that where they are at in their relationship of I guess on their journey versus where the other person at can be very different. Yeah. Perhaps one person's made the decision to separate and the other person doesn't know yet. That's not unusual. That happens. But because of that, the process can be very different. Reactions can be very different. It's a highly emotional time. So my first piece of advice always is to talk to someone, to get some counselling, to whether it's a psychologist, a counsellor, someone probably qualified in addition to girlfriends and your support network, because the insight that they can give you to the decision, making sure that you understand the ramifications of the decision and your emotions and everything else, it really can be the make or break. If you want to try relationship counselling, you're better placed to do that before you separate. Those kinds of things I think are probably absolutely crucial. I'm also a big advocate that I think that to get proper advice from a legal professional as to what it looks like, the process, your entitlements and everything else is really important, so that when you're making the decision, you have all of the information. Yeah. It's one of those things you can't really stuff back into the box. Once it's out, it's out. But yeah.
Yep. Solid advice. Solid advice. And Shaneel, say we're talking to the same listeners and they're in a position where they have a joint set up. Some may have a bank account, some may not. Some may be working and some may not, just for whatever reason. And I want your advice on what they sort of need to double check before they take that leap. Is there some sort of basic checklist of affairs you need to have in order before you take that leap?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a checklist. There probably is on Google somewhere.
As
such. Yeah, someone's probably written one up. But I think my biggest recommendation would be to sit down and actually work out, okay, how much does it cost for me to live week by week? Just so you have that idea in your head around, okay, this is how much I need to be comfortable and this is what I need to support my kids or whatever it may be. And I think the other biggest thing would be knowing who you can go to for help, and knowing your support network that you have. And I think knowing that it's okay to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help, especially if you are surrounded by people that are in different fields that you can go to. I think, having that support network there is the biggest thing, because without that, doing it on your own would just be so difficult.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, sorry, can I jump back in? I think it's really interesting as well, because, we're in 2022 where we expect that times have changed so much that, we know where our finances are doing and, both people are working and all of this, and it's not necessarily the case. And I think having a really solid understanding of your financial situation now, but also what you need to survive is so important. And
exactly,
and adding to that stress at the end when you've left and then all of a sudden there's a rental crisis and you can't find accommodation, and all of these different factors is planning, and it's not doing underhanded things or behind the back, but it's really making sure that you have all of the information so that when you do take the step, if you decide to, you're not in this situation where you're in quicksand trying to keep your head above, but you actually have a game plan. Really
there are a lot of cases out there where sometimes people don't have a good idea around, their finances and all of those sorts of things. They may not even have, their own bank account set up or something like that. That would be one thing that I would highly recommend as well, is just going and opening up your own bank account if you don't have that in place, so that you've got that there. And ideally, you want to have some savings behind you, but I know that isn't available to everyone in every situation. But like Steph mentioned, with the rental crisis, having to go find a rental, paying bond, all of those things, just sit down and work out how much it's actually going to cost you. I would never want it to deter anyone from actually making that decision to not break up with someone if they're in an unhappy relationship. But I think it's really important that you have to know those things.
And would you seek like government support if that's you're
definitely
in that
that's an option. You can go to something like Centrelink to go apply and see what your options are there.
All fabulous advice. So moving on, let's fast forward to those who have reached out and they've said they're out, they're done, or at least they're trialing a separation. Everything is fresh. What are the do's and don'ts in that time, legally and financially? Steph, in that sometimes hostile time where things get heated and emotions get the better of us, what advice do you give the listeners about how to remain a level of grace for the sake of the situation and the potential ramifications they could have moving forward? I know you see it all the time.
Yeah, I think probably I'm a really avid believer in the idea that you can't take words back. So when you're engaging and you're throwing out barbs and you're trying to hurt the other person the way that they've hurt you, or vice versa, or whatever else, you can't take that stuff back in life or in divorce. So I think that my advice always is to play nice and be really respectful. There's a scene in Wedding Crashers, and at the start where the two guys are mediating and the couple are just yelling at each other and saying horrific things to each other. And then they're like, come on, there must be something you loved about each other. And I think that's really good to remember.
Yeah.
I know that during those processes you're feeling so much hurt and anger and many different emotions, but at some point you obviously very much cared for that person and you respected them and all of that. So I think that is really important, and perhaps people underestimate the power of keeping that front of mind, that this is someone that you've chosen at some point to be in a relationship with, and that respect needs to carry through. After that, my rule for my clients always is no social media. I don't want to see how horrible a person they are. I don't want to see memes about divorce parties. I want it to be clean cut. The court doesn't look kindly upon it. I can certainly tell you that your spouse won't look kindly upon it. And the truth is, in most experiences, your friends are like, oh, why did you post that? Again, can't take it back. So from my perspective, that's really important. If there are children involved, I think using a child psychologist or counsellor to assist as a couple for you to understand how to tell the children and how to engage them in what's going on and make them feel okay with it, that's age appropriate for where they are. The Family Law Act in Australia provides for any arrangement to be in the best interest of the children, and at the core of that is that children should be allowed to be children and not have to be involved in the conflict. So not delivering messages, not knowing how much is being paid in child support, really protecting them from that adult stuff. They're kids, let them be kids and protect them. In terms of do's, I would just say be honest, be transparent, get really good advice from your financial experts, a mortgage broker, real estate agents, whatever you need to do within your matter. And don't believe everything that your girlfriends or friends or the Google, I call it Dr. Google, tells you, because your matter is going to be so much different to the next person's. And if you put all your eggs in their basket, that's not necessarily going to give you the best outcome for yourself.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I touched on so many important tips there, but all I could think of was meatloaf.
In Wedding Crush, I know. So funny. I couldn't give a direct quote because it's probably not appropriate.
No, valuable advice. Sorry. Shaneel, what are some more permanent items these listeners need to be focusing on to help put themselves in the best position, being more future focused? From experience, I know when you're going through such a pivotal time, it can feel quite melancholy. Like it just feels like a bit like, oh, YOLO. And you just, you can lose focus. And it's like, from my experience, from my upbringing, it's very fight or flight. So it just feels a bit of a weird time. What's something like the advice to give people to keep them on the straight and narrow so that when, the dust settles, not everything like falls apart?
Yeah, definitely. I think from the financial side of things, definitely setting yourself a budget so that you know that what you need to stick to be able to live, especially if there is a lot or some money involved around it, if there is a settlement or something around in that sense. The best thing to do would actually be to go see a financial planner and ask for advice from them as to, where should I be putting this? What should I be investing in? Because they'll go through a whole list of questions to find out your risk profiles, all of those sorts of things to suit your needs. Other than that, I think setting goals as well for yourself is a massive thing that will help you, and it will allow you to also, when you do reach those milestones, you can go YOLO and treat yourself. It's allowing you to have those achievements as well. So
get it the right way around.
And people all the time will say, I didn't even know I was capable of this, because when they've got proper advice and they can hit those targets and do the goals and follow Shaneel's budget, they can accomplish things and they can do things. And, it could be even as simple as I need an extra $200 a week income or.
Exactly. And it can be very daunting, I think, in the beginning as well, if you have always had, the support of a partner there that you can rely on and lean on. So just have the confidence that you can actually do it on your own, because you definitely can. You just need to set the things in place, like setting yourself a budget, knowing this is how much we're going to put towards everything. This is how much I need to bring in, and that will give you that confidence to get there.
Yeah. It's beautiful advice. It's honestly, there's people out there to help you. Hey, if
Definitely.
it's not your jam, then
it's not everyone's forte.
Yeah.
So go to the experts that can guide you the right way.
Yeah. Amazing. And you touched on the kids in the last question, but I wanted to talk a bit more. Because honestly, the questions that normally come through are more often than not prefaced with kids are involved, and that's the reason why I'm staying, and they're just asking for advice on when is the right time to let the kids know if there's a perfect age or whether they need to wait for a certain age to split. I know there is never a magic age when separation is an easy topic to broach, but when it comes to our beautiful children. So I'd just love to know your thoughts professionally or even personally, as I know all three of us are products of separations, divorces, and we all turned out
A-okay. I don't know.
But from your experience,
my parents will be listening.
We've got great sense of humour. From your experiences, how did the listeners go about children being involved? It's something I've had to navigate, and honestly, I found it's the hardest part of the whole process, co-parenting. You just don't want to let your children down, and the last thing you want is to traumatise them.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason why you leave in the first place. And what's some pointers or advice that helps soften the hard of it all? Because it's hard inevitably.
It is really hard. And I think that, I have friends and people close to me that are going through it, that have kids involved. And I think that the key for me, as I said before, would be getting some advice, if you can afford it, of course, to speak with a child psychologist about what that looks like. But there are also some really incredible books. I can't remember any off the top of my head, but I can give you some info that really are helpful. From, I guess, a personal experience and anything else. I think that if you're in a really unhappy relationship and you're staying for the children, you have to look at it and look at yourself and say, am I actually helping the children by staying here? And again, I'm not encouraging anyone to jump up and leave, but there is certainly the case where if you are arguing in front of children or they're being exposed to behaviour that is not appropriate, but it just continues to escalate, then it's not good for them. In terms of how to tell them and when to tell them, I think it comes down to age. If you have an early teen who's so insightful and knows what's going on, then of course you need some transparency around what that looks like. If you have a 5-year-old, you probably don't need to break down exactly why mum and dad are divorcing with all the nitty-gritty details. It's only going to create so much distress for them because they don't understand and they shouldn't have to understand. They shouldn't be worried about it. Very much the idea around, mummy and daddy are taking some time apart, up to we've made this decision. And then the other, I think, really important thing is not to tell them what the long-term plan is immediately, because the truth is, and I can tell you this from the other end, you don't know what the long-term plan is at that time. So to say to a child right when you're separating, oh, you're going to live between us equally and half-half and that's what's happening, and the other parent's thinking that's not what we discussed, and then the child has that expectation, it just adds more and more and more pressure. That child should never have to decide which parent they love more or want to be with more. The same way that you wouldn't as a parent say, oh, now I have to pick a child and only one. It's just not fair on them. So making sure that any decision that is being made by the two parents. And then once they're in this agreement, expressing it to the child. Because there's just so much confusion and turmoil. If they're upset when you tell them you're separating, of course they're going to be upset. Of course they are. But if that's a short-term problem for a better life for them, there are lots of benefits. They get 2 Christmases, they get 2 birthdays, they get to, have good time with both parents. And if the parents are happier, then that's going to benefit the children overall.
Yeah, and it may not show for the children, like only speaking from personal experience. In the beginning, it may seem very messy and all very upsetting, but later on down the track, when you do see how much happier your parents are, you then come to the understanding around why they did that.
Yeah.
So it is hard, and I completely agree with Steph in the sense of you should never put pressure on your kids to have to make a decision around who are they going to stay with, or talk badly about the other parent to try and incentivize them to stay with them longer. It's just so much for a child to go through, and at no matter what age you are, and you never want to put that sort of thing on your child to have to go through that.
It's really funny as well, because at the other end, when they do, the court uses psychologists and whatnot to meet with children, the number one piece of feedback that comes back is the child just doesn't want this to go on. The child just wants this to sort itself and to be out of it, because it just adds a huge amount of pressure, and it's not pretty.
Yeah. I was in that situation where my sister and I actually had to go through that, where someone came in and spoke to both me and my sister and sat us down and were like, okay, asked us all these questions.
She had 3 wishes.
And it was so much pressure, to be honest. And I was just at that age where I was like, I just want to please everyone. So it's so hard to know, what to say to them. So it is
How
something.
old would you have been then?
I was in like grade 7, 8. So around 12, 13, which is it's an age where you're already like, you're growing
vulnerable.
and, hormonal, all these things. So it's super hard to go through that. So if you can avoid that, avoid getting your kids involved in that situation, then that I agree is the best outcome. Yeah.
100%. Touching on the whole, at the end of the day, we want everyone to be happy. It's that iconic piece of information from Glennon Doyle, the Queen, or how Queen Glennon, in her book Untamed, when she's brushing her daughter's hair, and she was in this marriage, and she was like, thought to herself with her daughter, would I want this marriage for her? And when she realized she didn't, that she would do anything to avoid that, she was like, that's it for me. And you just got to break it down quite simply, because at the end of the day, no one wants anyone to be hurting or bad. It's just wanting that happiness, and keeping it, keeping the kids, I think, out of that decision, but just doing the work and thinking around it to protect them is much more valuable in the long run.
Yeah, that's right. And I think through that counselling process, or even with your girlfriends or whoever, there's no judgment. Everyone's on their own journey. And so if they want to stay, they can stay. And if they want to go, then they can go. And usually in most circumstances, you'll get the support, whatever your decision. From the people that care about you.
Yeah, and I've definitely found that, having gone through my journey, like a lot of women were going through a similar thing. Like COVID was breeding all sorts of situations in relationships, and at the end of the day, I was like, I want everyone to I want happy families, everyone to stay together if everyone's willing to grow together and stay together. Like, that was the end goal. But for me, it just was not an option at the end of the day. So, and that's okay. So when I think there was some shame in there, like especially being on social media, there were lots of women that were reaching out going, what do I do? And I'm like, was trying to give my 2 cents based off my situation, and then I'd say a good percentage of them just within a couple of months back posting happy families, and I'm like, good for them. Like, I'm really glad it worked out for them. There's no judgment from me. It's not like, oh, why did they work out and I didn't? It's just, that's the end goal, to be happy within your relationship if you can break through that barrier. But I think it's really important to keep in mind that everyone's journey is different, and you got to follow that intuition. You got to do what's right for your mental health and your happiness, and to show your kids that you deserve to be happy as well. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Oh, next question. From experience, I know it can be an isolating time. I was out on my own in the thick of lockdowns, so that was already a tricky time. But I know that even without that, it's so easy to play the comparison game and distance yourself. So I'd love to know some stats. Like, I know we're not alone. I know if you're going through it and you're like, I'm out. Like, some people just are like, it's done. What's the stats there? Is it quite high? Like
Yeah, you hear lots. From the last census they did, where they had all of the statistics of everything, what they've actually found is that the number of weddings per year has decreased since 1970 was the highest. I think it's decreased every year since then. And obviously divorce has increased. But what they're actually finding more and more is that people aren't getting married. For example, either second relationships or even first relationships. And so the statistics in terms of divorce rates are not accurate at the moment because the people who are in de facto relationships but are separating and have children, whatever, there's no tracking, there's no lodgement that can make sure or see the volume of that. But the most recent numbers from 2020 were 2 out of every 1,000 people going through a divorce.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that includes, older widowers, like everyone in terms of the 1,000 people. So it's, I think it's around 50%, but
yeah, right.
it's quite high.
Full on.
Keeps me busy.
Yeah.
And on that note, Shaneel, from a financial perspective, with that high turnover, I guess we just want the reassurance that people are going to be okay if they're starting again. Like it's quite common. Do you
Yeah.
will people be okay if they're starting
Of
again?
course, yeah. People will definitely be okay. And I think as we mentioned those tips before of making sure you do have those things in place from when you do separate, I think that's the key.
Yeah, you're
just
not,
have
you're not the only one.
No, you're definitely not the only. 50% of people in the world are going through this, and and a lot of them have come out and survived. So there's definitely faith there that you will survive.
Yeah. Okay. So I now want to change the tempo a little bit and ask some advice from more of these questions did come through a lot from our F45 gang actually, because they see us
interesting.
kick butt and they just want to know
How much do you chest press now?
a lot.
We strong.
Just how do you do the juggle? Like obviously you both own amazing successful businesses and then you both just such happy people, like you just seem to do it all. Like I love you obviously, but what's your non-negotiables like that you have to, is it health, is it doing your trips away? I know that you like taking your breaks, and what's some tips to do the juggle as corporate women that are in that face quite stressful situations every day, but you still you're in check?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's routine.
Yeah.
I'm a big routine person, and if I don't get up and go to F45 at 4:45 in the morning, it will actually send me crazy.
Yeah.
If I have a week off gym, I can notice it straight away. I'll just start getting so emotional because it is stressful running a business, definitely. And I think that is my outlet, and it's my one time where I can just go and do something for an hour, not think about work at all, because everything's just so fast paced. You don't even get a chance to think about it. So it's the time, just to switch off.
Yeah.
And then in terms of doing trips and travel, I love traveling, as a lot of people do, but my partner and I, we always try and utilize that as a time to really step out of the day-to-day within our business and come up with new ideas. And I think that's the only way that you can really do that is really step away from the business and have that time away to allow you to do that. Otherwise, it's so easy to just get bogged down in going in and out of work, doing your meetings, dealing with staff. Like you can so easily just get stuck in that. So it's super important to take that time.
Reinvigorate.
Yeah, definitely. And come back more refreshed.
Yeah.
It's better for the team as well.
Yeah.
You don't want to be, dealing with a grumpy boss
No.
all the time. You just need that time to reset. Otherwise, you'll go crazy.
Yeah.
And there's definitely times where, I have been Steph and I used to drive to gym together every single morning, and there's been multiple times where both of us have been in tears about something that we've both had to deal with.
Up in the car.
Just bawling. But we've got through it, and it's good.
Support crew, so important.
Yeah.
I also am a routine gal, though I'm not as good at it as Shaneel. I am unfortunately a slave to my job and always have been. And I have spent a lot of time on myself trying to put in place better systems and processes and my own mental health and everything else. I agree. I am much better human if I train, 4 or 5 times a week. I love running.
You did the half marathon recently.
Do the half marathon.
Yes, good.
I love it. So good for my head. For me though, like my major source of comfort and support and even self-esteem really does come from my girlfriends and my friendship circle. And being a new business owner, having people like Shaneel that I could go, oh, I don't know how to do this. How, she's just like, okay, I'll share screen, and help me. And I think one of my really good traits is that I'll be like, hey, I really need you. Can you stop what you're doing and come and help me with this? And I think that helps balance everything. I also think because my friends know that, because I do that, they can kind of identify it before I do, and then say, okay, what are we got to do to help you get through that? So it's not easy. I think it's like super challenging.
It is,
super challenging.
But it's infectious because I'm not one to ask for help. But I had you two lovely ladies helping me pack orders recently, like in the Father's Day rush on a late Thursday night when you've literally got your own businesses. But I think, having that support crew, realizing that people that love you just want to help you and you do the same for them is super important. I think that's something that the listeners can take on board today, because I can guarantee most people would be like, oh, I don't want to ask for help and I don't want to burden anyone.
Yeah. And I'm even that type of person. Like I know when I get in those situations, I just need to do it. I think I need to do everything myself. So it is really difficult to ask for help, but just know that it's going to be better for you in the long run. Yeah. You're not expected to have to do absolutely everything all the time on your own.
Amazing.
And most of the time I find what I'm stressed about, or that particular circumstance we came to help you, we had fun.
Yeah,
we had a really good time. I learned to pack things.
You learned how to do postage labels.
I wasn't allowed to touch any pens, but other than that, I was really good. But the same thing, what I spend an hour stressing about on Xero, Shaneel can probably solve for me in 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's knowing that and having that that part of it, I think, is super important.
Yeah,
amazing. We're going to go head over to our weekly segments, as there's plenty more to chat about over there. I'm sweating. This has been good chat. This is good chat. No. So love letters. Love letters. We had a fair few come in. So question number 1, it was just worded like this: easing guilt when you react poorly out of defensiveness. I suppose that's you've done something and you instantly regret it. You've lashed out. I think that's what that means.
I'm a big fan of apologies.
Yeah.
I think one of the most better things you can do for yourself is to actually say, that was unwarranted, or that was a bit harsh, or, I'm sorry. And if they know that you identify that you overreacted or lashed out or behaved poorly, it can really go a long way to own up to it and fall on your sword.
Yeah. And just and then park it and be like,
if you've apologized, what else are you
there's nothing more you can do from there.
Yeah, and just learn from it and
don't let yourself dwell on it too much and send yourself crazy over it.
Amazing. Question 2, money is the issue in our house. What are some ways of earning income? Oh, I'm sure they're not alone. What are some ways of earning income from home if you're wanting to work but also have to be at home with your baby? So like a passive income, I suppose, or income just working from home, to
definitely
contribute.
There's so much going on in the online e-commerce space. I think there's definitely opportunity there, but I think also being a business owner myself, we have really tried hard to make our working environment flexible for our staff. And I know a lot of workplaces out there have done the same thing in terms of allowing people to work from home, having flexi time, all of those sort of things. So even just going out and trying to find an employer that has a little bit more flexibility around those arrangements, so you can still be working and maybe have your kids there
I think that
workplaces all over are doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the other thing that I see can help often is, you know, in all of these message boards, and there's, you know, Gold Coast Girls in Business, and there's a Gold Coast community page.
Yes,
and there's Sorrento community page. My favourite Facebook page. People often post, you know, looking for someone to do my ironing, looking for you know, someone to look after my dog for 4 days, or whatever it is. I think that the opportunities are out there.
Yeah.
And even if it's you personally, reach out to people you know or your friends. If you ask, you may be surprised what people have.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there.
Absolutely.
I actually only recently just had, so we used to have a guy come into the office and help us set up our like desks and things when we got new desks.
Yeah.
If it was like from IKEA or something like that. And he was a gun at it.
That's my dream job.
Oh, he was
flat pack.
He was so good at it. And he actually reached out to me because he hurt his back.
Right.
And said, you know, I'm looking for something else to do. So just not being afraid to even send a text message, or, you know, going and posting something on Gold Coast Girls in Business. I've seen that multiple times where people have put themselves out there, just let everyone know their skills and what they're available for. And you see so many comments on there of people making recommendations around that. So I think, don't be just sitting there scared to sort of take this step, because it won't really get you anywhere. You've just got to really...
You never know where it's going to lead to.
Exactly.
And just like that, it's that propelling towards your purpose. Like you might start off with something that you're like, oh, that'll do, but you never, once you gain that momentum, like I said in previous episodes, I went and washed dishes because I was like, I can only work night times when Jace is in bed. Yeah. So I went and got a job working in a restaurant late hours because I was like, at least he's asleep and it doesn't affect him. But so, but you know, on paper you're like, oh, that's, you know, that's a bit shameful or whatever at the time. But I worked with an amazing crew, and then from there it gave me the confidence to be like, no, you can go back into the workforce. So just don't be so hard on yourself and take those baby steps, and it doesn't just get your foot in the door, and you reach out, because you never know what's waiting for you. Like those Facebook community pages can be amazing.
That, and even walking into workplaces, I have so much appreciation for people that will come in and drop their resume in to us, so because you actually get to meet them face to face. Another big recommendation for me is, if you are applying for jobs on Seek or any of those job platforms, is try and personally email the director or whoever their HR person is, rather than just being caught up in all of that Seek applications that come through. And if you have the confidence to even take the step to do a video of yourself, I highly recommend that as well, because sometimes you can't necessarily see what a person's like just from a resume. And when you have so many applications and you're seeing so many things all day, to really stand out, I think a video is a great way to do that, because you get to see someone's personality as well. And it might just, you know, give you that upper hand to get yourself in for an interview as well.
I can handle this person on Zoom calls.
Exactly.
Amazing. Okay. So question number 3, how do you deal with judgment, bullying from others who don't agree with your decision to separate?
Well, I feel like the obvious answer is they're probably not your friends.
Get rid of them.
They have judgment. But I think that this is a really common thing that I see all the time. People don't support my decision. My family don't support my decision, whatever it is. I think that if you believe in it, you have to be true to it. And I think that if they don't support you, then they probably don't have a space in your life anymore. The unfortunate reality of separation in most circumstances is that you will lose some friends.
Yeah.
You will. They will feel they have to take a side, or they might have a view of a side, or they might have heard 2 very different versions of the same event. But at the end of the day, if they're going to do that, you and I've experienced it through separation. I have lost people, and I've had people with very, very strong judgments. My rule was always, you know, be upset about it for an hour and then, all right, what's next? Let's roll. So I think that I'm oversimplifying it, of course, but at the end of the day, you can't control how they feel about your decision. You can only control how you feel about it. And if you think it's the right decision for you, then don't do anything to please anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you're pretty firm in your truth and you're like, yeah, it's pretty hard to be swayed. And you just got to, cut your losses really.
That's it.
And you win some, you lose some, but you just, as long as you know that you're doing the right thing and you're true to yourself, like you can't fester over other people's judgments of you. Otherwise you just won't be able to move forward.
Yeah. And they may down the line, you know, once you are, if they see how happy you are, they'll come to the understanding that, okay, that was the right decision that they made, and you may rekindle that relationship at some point. So,
Yes. Question number 4, final one. How do you find the strength to finally cut the cord when the other person isn't on board with separation, yet not willing to find resolution to the issues arising? So I take that as like when someone just doesn't, they're like, we can't get separated. Like what? We have to stay together because people just stay together.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what I said before in the very rarely are both people on the same day look at each other and say, oh, yeah, it's time. You know, I love these celebrity announcements where we've come to the mutual decision of love and respect for each other, and then it, you know, it's very unlikely that happens.
Uncoupling.
Yeah. Oh, conscious uncoupling.
Yes. Conscious uncoupling.
Yeah.
Gwyneth Paltrow, I think, was the one that started
she got a bad rap for it. I actually listened to a podcast with her about it, and she said that the point of it was to say we are consciously going to make this decision as bearable as we can.
Right.
So the idea that it, you know, which is actually kind of nice.
Yeah.
Everyone moves forward with a very conscious state.
Yeah.
Ideal.
Yeah.
Not always possible. But yeah, going back, I think one party is probably had been building up to the decision and is wrestling with the decision, and the other party thinks, oh well, maybe we're not that happy, but this is life and this is what we do. And so when that person tells them, well, I want to separate, I'm leaving, or I have left, or whatever the case may be, it can be really difficult. In Australia, the only grounds for divorce are irreconcilable differences, i.e. it doesn't matter if anyone's done anything wrong. It doesn't matter if someone doesn't want to get divorced or separated. If one person does, you can't force them to stay in a relationship. So it's a tricky situation and one that many people find themselves in. Yeah. Because they are at different stages. But I think that if you are honest and transparent, I think cutting the cord is key. Yeah. Dragging it out and being half in and half out and sort of being kind and think you're helping by being present and around and still going to dinner. This is just from personal experience. Yeah. Isn't helpful. Yeah. I think you need to cut the cord. You need to make the decision and deal with the consequences. It's going to be better for the other person in the long run. I truly do believe that.
Yeah. Agreed. I don't have anything to add to that. I think you covered it all.
Yeah. No, perfect advice. We're going to go into our fun little segment each week, Flashback Faves. Flashback Faves. So I want to know from you, my corporate besties, name a song or movie or vibe or moment in childhood that helped shape you, like is a part of who you are today. Like, and if you don't say Legally Blonde, I'll be highly disappointed. As I can imagine.
I hadn't even thought of it. But yes, I do love it. I was thinking about this, having listened to all your other podcasts and all the excellent answers that were out there. And I think back to, I was a bit of a punk rock kid. It didn't really make any I would drive in my silly car listening to the Ataris and Millencolin and you know, it really didn't probably have any effect on my work and what I do for a job, but it's probably the most present memory I have of those formative years. Right. In terms of lawyer life, I think I actually watched Ally McBeal, which is probably really showing my age. But
Callista.
But that was probably, that was it for me.
Ally McBeal.
Ally McBeal. And
Your Honor.
the creepy lawyer used to walk around with no shoes on, and everyone used to be like, it's so weird. But as an actual lawyer, when you've worked like 12 hours, it's not unusual.
I love that.
I think of him every time.
You're walking around the office with no shoes on? Yeah.
Very profesh. And Shaneel?
Mine, to be honest, I can't think of like a movie or a song or anything that shaped me into what I am today. It's more so probably childhood memories.
Yeah.
And maybe I think there's probably two main ones, and it wasn't really fun memories, I would say, but it's things that I hated at the time, but I feel like I'm very grateful for now. And that would be one from my mum actually and one from my dad. So from my mum, I am half Asian. I grew up with an Asian mum. And if anyone has an Asian mum, I feel like they do really embarrassing things all the time. And when I was growing up, she always used to cook like really weird food, and I'd get so embarrassed about it. I'd always be like, oh my God, someone's going to come over and be like, what's this weird food you have in your house? But now I look back at that and I'm actually so appreciative of like my heritage and everything that I come from, and so appreciative that I had that all available for me, like around like my mum's cooking and everything she exposed us to, because it has, you know, given me a massive love of food. I'm a massive foodie and I love travel for those reasons, because I just love eating food all over the world. Yeah. So that's something that I'm really grateful for, that I was maybe just embarrassed about when I was younger. And then on my dad's side, one thing I did a lot of surf life saving and swimming when I was growing up, and that was what my dad was into as well. When he grew up, he went through his childhood doing all of that as well. And he used to I used to go training every single morning for surf life saving, and on a Monday he would actually make me go and do swimming training at the pool at like 5 a.m. in the morning, and I hated it, absolutely hated it. I was like, why is he making me do this? Sometimes I'd cry because I wouldn't want to go. But I feel like having that consistency and routine and the discipline to go and train all the time has allowed me to be really disciplined in my life now around, you know, making sure I get up and go to the gym every single morning, having a set routine to get through the week basically when you are super busy. So I am really grateful for that, even though I absolutely hated it at the time.
No, it's funny, those parents, how they know how to parent sometimes. But yeah, I can relate to the weird cooking, because my mum would actually take it one step further. And I remember, like, you know, you'd get to school and kids would have the lunch boxes with like Samboy chips and a Vegemite saying,
and I'd be so jealous.
Well, my
like,
sandwich, I'd have a white bread sandwich with beef rendang in it. And I'd have it cold, and you could smell it from 2 blocks away.
Know, that's the thing, the smell of all the things, you're just like, why? Why
that
put
fish
your
sauce
child
really
through
comes through.
Yeah, they just do the weirdest things. And I remember my mum even had this thing that she would do, and I don't know why. If we ever got infected ears when we were little, like if your ears got infected or something, she would cut up garlic into tiny little sticks and make us wear garlic sticks in our ears to school. And everyone would be like, why have you got a stick in your ear? And it was garlic.
That's character building.
No, I feel like it made it worse. It was actually painful.
I actually call it AMS, Asian Mum Syndrome. It's a thing.
It's the worst thing, honestly. Like anyone with an Asian mum.
Yeah, they have the best intentions most of the time.
But at the same time, they can be embarrassing.
Yeah, it's for me, it wasn't garlic, it was Vicks, but you'd get it in the eyeballs and up your nostrils, and like, I'm like, surely I don't need that much Vicks. Final segment.
I'm feeling left out.
Words to live your week by. Words to live your week by. I would love to know from 2 very wise women what your quote or piece of passage of words that you want to impart today with the listeners that you feel helps you at times. Share your words. And yeah, we'll go with Steph first.
Mine is remember when you used to pray for what you have now. In interchange pray for your beliefs, but I have obviously for the last however many years just been always looking forward, always doing more, always working harder, always on to the next thing, and putting a huge amount of pressure on myself. And in the last couple of years, I have really tried to stop and go, remember when you used to want all of this and you're living it and you're not enjoying it because you're so worried about this, and this. And I say it to myself often. I have it on my wall in my office, and it really is. I live a wonderful life and I love what I do for work. I need to stop and enjoy it a little bit more and stop letting the stress of the day-to-day stuff, you know, really bring me down and make me want for more or the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's me.
Mine is very much actually in line with yours, and it's something that my nana always used to say to me and my sister, and it is, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans, which comes back to exactly what you said, Steph. So yeah, I always think of that. It's like a massive reminder that we need to slow down and be grateful for what we have day to day, celebrate the wins that, you know, when we have something amazing happen, make sure that we acknowledge that and don't just let the busyness of life get in front of you and take over that. So yeah, it's a good reminder. I think it's actually a John Lennon quote, maybe, but yeah, she always used to say it to us. Yeah.
It takes wise old women to say it too, to really let it set in with, you know, they've lived it. But yeah, I agree. I'm in the season now where I've got to stop sometimes and be like, you get so caught up in that next step. It's so easy to do. And especially in such a transitional time when you're like, I just don't know why sometimes it feels like you're racing the clock. Like just to sort of slow down and be like, no, it's okay. Like, I think that's when training and like nature comes into play as well. It's just like, so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. But yeah.
Definitely. And something I used to do all the time, and something I should actually really get back into, I feel like I need to, is I used to, and I know a lot of people do it, write a gratitude journal just before I went to bed every single night of 3 things that I was grateful for. And they could just be the smallest things like, you know, I'm grateful for having a really hot shower this morning or something like that. But it really makes you think about that. And I really need to get back into the habit of doing that again, because it is really hard when you are busy to,
Yeah, that's our homework.
Yes.
This week. Amazing. I think that's it. We've gotten through a lot today, and I'm so grateful for you guys taking the time out of your busy schedules to have a chat today, and hope it wasn't too nerve-wracking. I'm sorry I put you in this situation.
No, it's fine.
But you guys, are amazing at what you do, and I know that there are going to be, I hope, and I know that there are going to be a lot of women that will be sitting back and listening, if not for themselves, for friends who might be going through a similar situation. Like, it's all information that is scary and hard to talk about. And I, for one, don't really like talking about it either. But when it's asked so much, it's hard to ignore. And I want to be, have that big love energy for people going through a real hard time, because I was there. And so if this helps a couple of ladies or men out there going through a difficult situation, I'm really grateful for you guys taking the time today and having the conversation.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Jessie.
It's been a really great time. You're very good at podcasting.
You are. You're a natural.
One day I'll learn to podcast and not sweat at the same time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jessie.
And there we go. Thank you for listening. If you loved this week's episode, please leave a review or provide a 5-star rating. It really helps us. Let us know that you're loving the show. And of course, any DMs and comments and shares, we really appreciate as well. All the feedback has been amazing. Thank you so much. You can stay up to date with us and follow our socials, Big Love Energy Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. But we'll pop all the social handles in the show notes below. Thanks for listening, lovers. I can't wait to get into next week's episode. We'll chat then. Bye.
I don't want just anybody.